Breaking today, popularity ratings for Meghan Markle in her home country of America are absolutely damning.
It does seem to be that it is coming towards the end of their grifts, and they have not got many options left.
So this really is a crisis now.
Something is shifting in Meghan Markle's American image, and this time it's not based on opinion, headlines, or social media noise. It's based on data. New polling and digital traffic figures out of the United States are painting a picture that is significantly different from the public narrative surrounding the Duchess of Sussex.
But actually, this is really fascinating because it's like massive dip in US popularity, massive dip in US website traffic, all at the same time.
While her post-royal brand has been consistently framed as influential, aspirational, and commercially promising, the latest numbers suggest something far less flattering: a steady decline in public interest and approval.
A drop like that is huge and quick. Like usually you'll tend to see like maybe up a couple of points, down a couple of points, depending on people say have had a big movie out or if they've been involved in a big story. But a 13-point decline over 2 quarters. Trust me, this is what like a PR expert would say required a reputational crisis management intervention. The problem is, I think that's been tried so often by Meghan.
At the same time that Meghan's popularity metrics have taken a noticeable downturn, her lifestyle business, as ever, is also showing a parallel drop in engagement. Web traffic data indicates fewer American visitors month after month, despite the fact that the United States remains her only active consumer market. This creates a rare overlap between two separate indicators: public sentiment and commercial attention, both moving in the same direction. And while that alone would be enough to raise questions, the conversation has now expanded beyond numbers.
However, if the trend persists, it is likely to draw attention from Meghan's team as they plan their future marketing strategy.
Because a second controversy is building in parallel: the role of major media outlets in shaping Meghan Markle's public image. Some critics are now asking whether certain publications are still reporting on her or actively promoting her. At the center of that debate is one unexpected name: People magazine. And what's being claimed is starting to attract serious attention.
Harry and Meghan operate on PR. They need to get stories out there to tell the world that they're doing great, even though everything is quite clearly and obviously crumbling down around them.
For years, People magazine has been one of the most consistent sources of positive coverage for Meghan Markle. But in 2026, critics argue that the volume and tone of coverage has reached an entirely different level. The articles are not focused on political impact, major achievements, or industry-defining projects. Instead, they follow a familiar pattern: lifestyle features, fashion breakdowns, personal moments, and curated glimpses into Meghan's everyday life.
And I can't help but feel it's like when people buy a bumper pack of advertising. You want the billboard package that includes the magazine and a certain number of articles. You pay X amount of money: the VIP, the gold package, the bronze package.
Headlines highlight topics such as her wardrobe choices, her home aesthetic, her kitchen style, and her curated lifestyle branding.
The most recent headline says Meghan Markle's coastal kitchen has us eyeing rustic cake stands, floral plates, and more charming finds from $9. Now, can we just be honest about it? Because everyone knows their kitchen is gross.
Even minor appearances or one-off product mentions are transformed into full-scale feature stories. According to critics who have tracked coverage patterns, People magazine has published over 100 Meghan-related pieces in 2026 alone.
But there's a reason why Meghan never uses their own kitchen for her TV show or her photo shoots, because it's dark, it's dingy, it's dated, and apparently it's the laughingstock of the Montecito locals. So for People magazine to say that actually people are wanting these floating wooden shelves, copper cookware, and bamboo spoons was a new low.
The repetition, they argue, is not in subject matter, but in messaging. Across the coverage, the framing remains consistent: Meghan Markle as a devoted mother, Meghan Markle as a loving wife, Meghan Markle as a successful entrepreneur, Meghan Markle as a misunderstood but resilient public figure. Different headlines, same structure, different angles, identical tone. This has led to a growing question being raised online: at what point does repeated positive coverage stop being journalism and start functioning as image reinforcement?
anyone there that actually does any reporting and not really focus on the terrible things that have gone on with African parks and Harry still promoting them? How can they not talk about the fact that Harry is being sued by Centre Barley, but instead Harry and Meghan's life is great. Harry and Meghan's life is amazing. They know that kitchen that Meghan is posing in is not her kitchen. They know it was a hired house, yet there's still that article saying, oh, look at Meghan, everybody's so jealous of her coastal kitchen. That's not her kitchen. You know it's not her kitchen, but you're still pumping that out there.
One of the most heavily discussed examples involves a recent feature focusing on Meghan's coastal kitchen aesthetic, highlighting decorative lifestyle items and design choices. Critics argue that the portrayal does not reflect reality, but instead constructs an aspirational image designed for consumption rather than reporting.
This manufactured nonsense, like you said, it is just pure Sussex propaganda, and they are ignoring the truth that everybody can see.
Supporters of the coverage describe it as harmless celebrity lifestyle journalism. Critics, however, see something different, a tightly controlled narrative loop where positive framing is continuously recycled without scrutiny, contrast, or challenge. The debate intensified further when commentary emerged, suggesting that Meghan's broader media strategy relies heavily on selective visibility. Frequent lifestyle exposure, combined with limited engagement on more complex or controversial topics. In that context, People magazine is no longer being discussed simply as a publication. It is being discussed as a participant in the narrative itself.
And Harry can't afford to keep pumping in the millions and millions because they're going through the inheritance money.
And as these criticisms grow louder, they are now intersecting with something far more difficult to ignore. The data showing that public interest in Meghan Markle may be moving in the opposite direction of her media visibility. For years, Meghan Markle's public image in the United States has been described as politically irrelevant but culturally visible, a figure who consistently generates attention, controversy, and media cycles, even when she is not actively releasing major projects.
Her popularity has been in freefall because everybody knew that it would happen. There were so many people that predicted it, and they're right.
That visibility has often been interpreted as stability. Regardless of sentiment, she remained firmly embedded in the public conversation. Recent polling data, however, suggests that the structure of that attention may be changing in a more measurable way.
Meghan Markle's popularity among Americans fell in the first 3 months of 2026, at the same time as visits to her as ever online shop also dipped.
According to YouGov's rolling sentiment tracking in the United States, Meghan Markle's approval ratings have shifted significantly between late 2025 and early 2026, marking one of the sharpest short-term movements in her public perception since leaving royal duties.
These figures represent a sharp drop from the third quarter of 2025.
In the third quarter of 2025, Meghan registered 37% favorable opinion and 22% unfavorable opinion, resulting in a net approval rating of +15. While not exceptionally high, these figures placed her in a position of clear positive balance. More Americans viewed her favorably than unfavorably, and the gap between the two groups was wide enough to suggest relative stability in her public image. At that point, her perception followed a familiar pattern, a well-known public figure with a polarized but manageable reputation profile.
Meghan recorded around 246,000 visitors to the site, of which 108,000 were from the US. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because she's only selling to the US. So it means she's getting well over 100,000 visits that actually are irrelevant to her business proposition. It might be people like me who are looking a bit nosily and saying, oh, ha, 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 isn't that funny, this latest message or whatever, but they're not buying product.
By the first quarter of 2026, that balance had changed. The same tracking system recorded Meghan at 29% favorable and 27% unfavorable, reducing her net approval to just +2. On paper, that is a 13-point drop in net approval within 2 quarters. In polling analysis, this type of movement is significant for 2 reasons. First, it represents a narrowing gap between positive and negative sentiment, meaning the public is becoming more divided, almost evenly between support and disapproval. Second, the speed of the shift suggests that the change is not gradual background drift, but a relatively concentrated period of reevaluation among respondents.
But, and this is a huge but, US visits fell to 89,000, indicating that the US traffic declined despite an overall increase in visits. And Meghan, I repeat, is only selling to America, which means that her sort of customer base has actually dipped to 89,000. Remember, the vast majority of those people will not be buying anything.
The YouGov methodology also adds context to the data. Because it uses a rolling system, responses are collected continuously rather than in a single snapshot. This means the quarterly figures are not dependent on one isolated moment or event, but instead reflect aggregated sentiment over an extended period of time. In practical terms, the decline is not tied to a single controversy or headline, but to a broader trend in perception across multiple months. What makes the shift more notable is the direction of movement across both metrics. It is not only that favorable ratings have decreased, but that unfavorable ratings have increased at the same time.
And of course, what she probably should do is shutter as never. It should just go as ever. Sorry, was never, as Lady C calls it. It should just go. It should just be shuttered. It should just be consigned to the to the trash heap. She should give away, Tash, the millions of cans of jam, what do you call tins of jam? She should give them away to worthy causes. Seriously, she should send them to Africa. She should just, she should take the financial hit.
Africa has been through enough, Dan. They've been through enough.
This combination typically indicates polarization resolving into more negative balance, rather than simple disengagement or indifference. While the data does not explain causation, the timing has drawn attention because it aligns with a period of sustained visibility for Meghan Markle across media coverage, lifestyle branding, and public commentary cycles. During the same time frame, she remained consistently present in lifestyle features, business-related updates, and ongoing discussion around her post-royal commercial direction.
Meghan oversaturated us. She was everywhere. It was every week. It was magazine interviews. It was As Ever. It was Netflix. It was specials. It was appearances and pap strolls. Then, of course, we had, the disaster tourism. It has been relentless. And then for them to also, which I think has definitely damaged them, for them to suddenly flip back round and trying to be taken seriously as royals again has backfired on epic proportions, because they have then lost another chunk of their remaining fan base.
However, sentiment data alone does not measure financial performance or audience behavior. That is where a second dataset becomes relevant. Because alongside the decline in polling figures, digital traffic data connected to Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, As Ever, shows a similar directional movement in its US audience.
And the outside traffic, it's people like myself. It's people on social media going to have a look at what videos she's dropped to see what silliness she's done now. Is she stroking herself? Is she eyeing up, a fictional man in the background as she slaps some sauce into a jar? I mean, she's become rather comical.
The overlap between perception and engagement is what has made the broader trend a focal point of discussion. Not because one proves the other, but because both datasets are moving in the same direction over the same period of time. And in narrative terms, that alignment is difficult to ignore.
April was disastrous. It tanked 178,000 overall, but just 61,500 in the US. Now, remember, if you look at the start of the year, she was at 108,000. That's almost a halving of her internet traffic in the US, which is where she is selling to.
While public opinion data shows a shift in sentiment, the commercial side of Meghan Markle's brand story presents a second dataset that has attracted equal attention: direct engagement with her lifestyle venture As Ever. Web traffic analytics tracking the platform's performance indicate a consistent downward movement in US-based visitors over a 5-month period, with fluctuations that ultimately resolve into a clear decline from the brand's most important market. In December, As Ever recorded approximately 246,000 total visits, including around 108,000 from the United States.
Everything that you tried to make a success has exploded. It's fallen apart. You failed at everything. You've burnt every single bridge. Now you're trying to sniff back around the royal family.
Given that the US remains the only confirmed operating market for the brand, this figure represented the core audience base and the most commercially relevant traffic segment. At that stage, American users made up a substantial portion of engagement, forming the primary indicator of potential customer activity. In January, overall traffic increased slightly to 268,000 visits, suggesting continued curiosity around the brand.
And again, like we said earlier, even the promoting and rewarding the trolls. Meghan and Harry have really been the masters of their own demise, and seeing these figures in real time, it is incredibly damaging, because it's showing that everything is gone. They've pretty much hanging on tooth and nail to everything now, and I'd be very surprised if As Ever's got another 18 months in it, in all honesty.
However, US-based traffic dropped to 89,000, marking the first noticeable decline in the segment that directly corresponds to sales eligibility. This divergence between total visits and US engagement became an early signal that interest was not evenly distributed across markets. In February, the pattern continued. Total visits decreased to 213,000, while US traffic fell further to approximately 83,500.
I can't see anyone's going to even want to try and buy it off of her, which I think is what she's desperately trying to do. She's trying to make it look like, look, I've sold over 1 million jars of jam. Look at all of the traffic. Look at all of these people. I think she's probably out there trying to scope around for some poor schmuck to try and buy it off of her. You know, like she sees these deals with other people, like Justin Bieber's wife. You know, she sold her makeup collection for millions, if not, you know, closer to 1 billion. But there's nothing as ever. Who the hell would want to buy that shit?
Both metrics moved downward simultaneously, reinforcing the direction of the trend rather than suggesting a one-off correction. March brought a partial recovery in overall visibility, with 226,000 total visits. However, US traffic only rose to 94,000, still significantly below the December baseline and failing to restore earlier levels of engagement. That temporary stabilization did not continue. In April, the most pronounced drop in the sequence appeared.
And the issue that she's really got is that, so she has obviously decided, well, I need to go down the beauty path, I need to go down the fashion path, which she first rejected, right? Yeah. But Tash, what is going to be really difficult from a branding point of view, and this really matters, especially as you say, if you're trying to prepare a business to be sold, is like, does she launch that under As Ever, which is already a failed brand? Any branding expert would tell you no. But then the problem is she ends up competing with herself because she has one brand that's failing while trying to launch another brand.
Total visits fell sharply to 178,000, while US traffic declined to 61,500. This represents a reduction of nearly half compared to December's US figure. Across the full 5-month period, the trajectory is consistent.
Meghan was liked by 29%.
A starting point above 100,000 US visitors, followed by progressive declines interrupted only by minor fluctuations, and ending at a level significantly below initial performance. The importance of this pattern lies in its market specificity. Unlike general traffic metrics, As Ever operates with a defined consumer base, with the United States as its primary, and at this stage, only active commercial region.
They don't bring in an income. They've got no career. They've got no big deals. They've got no big contracts. They've got nothing left to bring in the big bucks.
This means US engagement is not a secondary indicator. It is the core measurement of viability. International visits, while present in the data, do not currently translate into direct market activity under the brand's operating structure, making the US segment the most critical figure in assessing performance.
None of the other streaming services, after Netflix, you know, made them free, seem to be interested in coming in and swooping them up in a contract. You've not heard anything from like Disney, Paramount, you know, and Amazon. Nope. Amazon, there's no chance. I think now she's really upset Sanchez. But yeah, I am struggling to see how they're going to continue to bring in the sort of money to have the lifestyle that they quite clearly want.
When viewed in isolation, each monthly shift could be interpreted as normal variation in early-stage brand exposure. However, when plotted across the full period, the direction of movement becomes consistent enough to form a clear downward trend rather than random fluctuation.
She's decided not to use her name as the brand, but people hate the Was Never brand, so it's very, very difficult.
By April, the gap between the highest recorded point and the lowest becomes visually and numerically significant. From 108,000 US visits in December down to 61,500 in April. This change has become a focal point in broader discussions about audience retention and long-term interest in Meghan Markle's commercial ventures.
And then she should start again, you know, and she should start again with the Meghan Markle fashion and beauty brand. But again, I struggle to see how it's going to work.
Particularly given that it occurs alongside a separate shift in public sentiment metrics over the same general time frame. The alignment between declining attention and declining traffic has not been framed as causation, but as correlation occurring in parallel datasets. And it is that parallel movement that has drawn continued scrutiny. Beyond sentiment data and traffic figures, the next layer of scrutiny surrounding Meghan Markle's post-royal ventures focuses on a more structural issue.
And Harry and Meghan do not have that sort of money. They do not have that sort of likability. They have got no talent between them. They've got no job. What, Harry being the chimpo at Better Up, he's hardly going to be raking in the millions. He can't even fill, what was it, like 150 bottoms on seats over in Australia. Meghan couldn't even get, that venue.
The long-term viability of the brand itself. At present, As Ever remains primarily focused on the United States market, with no fully established international rollout. This creates a narrow operational base, where performance is heavily dependent on a single audience segment rather than diversified global demand.
Everything you had to endure growing up in the royal family, everything Meghan had to endure because of the horrible, wicked royal family. And then obviously Harry and Meghan are like, we want to be treated like royals again. We would like to be, allowed back in. We want the king to come to the Invictus Games. We want the royal family to be supporting us again.
Within that framework, the recent decline in U.S. engagement takes on greater significance, because it directly affects the only confirmed consumer pipeline currently supporting the brand. At the same time, there has been ongoing discussion around potential expansion into broader lifestyle categories, including fashion and beauty.
People have lost interest in them. They've lost respect in them. I mean, the crowds that she drew from, going over to Geneva to be taken seriously, talking about child online safety. And I mean, in the same 12-hour span, posts another picture of her daughter in pajamas, looking like she's shining her shoes, like Orphan Annie and Miss Hannigan. I mean, the woman is literally hitting self-destruct on everything.
However, expansion at this stage introduces a strategic complication, scaling a brand while its core engagement metrics are trending downward. In commercial terms, this creates a mismatch between growth ambition and audience momentum. The situation has drawn comparisons to other celebrity-led brands that required significant external investment and long development cycles before achieving stability.
Crunched the numbers and worked out that it's not only the was-never business that is crashing, it links directly with the crash in Meghan's US popularity.
One commonly referenced example is Victoria Beckham's fashion business, which underwent years of sustained financial support and restructuring before reaching a more stable commercial position. The key difference highlighted in these comparisons is scale and backing. Established fashion ventures often rely on long-term capital infusion, brand partnerships, and extended periods of operating losses before achieving profitability. Whether As Ever has access to comparable structural support has become part of the wider discussion. Another factor complicating the outlook is brand identity itself.
Like in the past, People magazine may have been able to say, oh, well, actually, the Brits don't like Meghan, but we have an audience that does like Meghan. Well, not if you look at the new figures that Jack Royston has revealed in Newsweek.
Unlike traditional corporate launches, celebrity-driven businesses are closely tied to personal public perception. In this case, fluctuations in visibility and sentiment can directly influence consumer behavior in a way that is less pronounced in conventional retail models. This creates a feedback loop. Public interest influences traffic. Traffic influences perceived success, and perceived success feeds back into public interest.
Newsweek, formerly an ally of the Sussexes, has revealed that not only are visits to the As Ever, or Was Never, as Lady Colin Campbell calls it, website, down, 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 so too is her overall popularity in America, which means this whole mission has been a disaster.
Within that loop, declining engagement metrics become more than just performance data. They become part of the brand narrative itself. At the same time, there is an additional strategic question regarding segmentation.
Why this means People magazine is now becoming the official propaganda outfit for Harry and Meghan to quite a ludicrous extent.
If expansion into new categories such as beauty or fashion were to proceed, it raises the issue of whether those products would operate under the existing As Ever identity or require a separate brand structure entirely. This distinction is not cosmetic. It determines whether future product lines inherit existing perception trends or attempt to establish an independent identity.
And the fact that People magazine ignores the actual truth and the evidence that is out there to show that Harry and Meghan are not doing great across any areas, but they continue this manufactured pumping out of these articles. It's like they bought the gold package and they're going to continue to keep pumping it out.
Because if a new category launches under the same brand umbrella, it carries both the benefit and the risk of existing recognition. If it launches separately, it requires rebuilding awareness from the ground up in a market where attention is already fragmented. For now, these remain open strategic questions rather than confirmed decisions.
Look at this. Meghan Markle hiked in the podiatrist-approved sneakers shoppers say feel comfortable. Now, she wore this once. She wore these sneakers once in Australia. Royally Sage pointed out Rachel is reduced to being an influencer. That is an embarrassing drop from being a working royal.
However, they are being discussed alongside the existing performance data, which continues to show a decline in U.S. engagement over the measured period. And in that context, the central issue becomes less about individual data points and more about direction, whether current trends represent temporary fluctuation or the early stages of a longer structural challenge for the brand.
Call it what it is, a celebrity image management platform disguised as reporting. People magazine has devolved into a captive mouthpiece for Meghan Markle's image rehabilitation machine. The archive speaks for itself.
Alongside the polling data and commercial performance metrics, another element of the current discussion centers on media framing and the way Meghan Markle's public image is being presented across major lifestyle publications. One of the most frequently cited examples is People magazine, which has maintained a steady stream of Meghan-related coverage throughout 2026. The content is largely lifestyle-focused, covering fashion choices, home aesthetics, personal milestones, and curated family moments rather than investigative or policy-driven reporting. Across the year, the coverage follows a consistent pattern, recurring themes presented through slightly varied headlines.
This is coming directly from Harry and Meghan. Sometimes Prince Harry is actually emailing this publication direct.
Meghan Markle is framed repeatedly as a devoted mother, a supportive partner, a successful entrepreneur, and a resilient public figure navigating post-royal life. Critics of this coverage argue that the repetition itself is the defining feature. The argument is not centered on a single article, but on the volume and uniformity of output over time. According to aggregated observations shared in public commentary, People magazine has published well over 100 Meghan-focused pieces in 2026 alone.
The same stories recycled in slightly different packaging. The formula never changes. Meghan Markle, the devoted mother. Meghan, the loving wife. Meghan, the visionary entrepreneur. Meghan, the misunderstood figure. Meghan, the resilient success story. Different headline, identical narrative.
While the topics vary in surface detail, ranging from style breakdowns to lifestyle features, the underlying narrative structure remains largely unchanged. This has led to increasing debate about the role of lifestyle media in shaping celebrity perception, particularly when coverage is heavily skewed toward positive framing. Supporters of the publication's approach argue that this type of content reflects audience demand and falls within the scope of entertainment journalism. In that view, recurring lifestyle features are not evidence of narrative control, but rather consistent coverage of a high-interest public figure. However, critics point to the absence of critical or investigative balance within this coverage cycle.
People magazine has published an astonishing volume of Meghan Markle articles just in 2026 alone. Not major interviews, not award wins, not blockbuster projects, not cultural moments that actually dominated headlines. Instead, readers get a relentless cycle of product launches, Instagram recaps, outfit breakdowns, sweet family nods, vacation glimpses, and glowing lifestyle features, month after month.
The argument presented is that when a single tone dominates output over time, the distinction between reporting and image reinforcement becomes less clear. This discussion has intensified in parallel with the previously noted shifts in public sentiment and digital engagement. While media coverage does not directly determine polling outcomes or traffic performance, it contributes to the broader environment in which public perception is formed. In that context, the role of lifestyle publications becomes part of a larger ecosystem, one that includes audience sentiment, commercial performance, and narrative repetition across media platforms. Separately, commentary has also focused on the broader media ecosystem surrounding celebrity coverage, where similar articles are often syndicated, repackaged, or rephrased across multiple outlets. This creates a cycle of repeated narratives that reinforce visibility, even when substantive new developments are limited. Within that structure, the discussion is no longer solely about individual headlines, but about the consistency of framing over time. And as these layers intersect, media output, public sentiment, and commercial data, the overall picture being formed is not based on a single source, but on multiple streams of information moving in parallel. The result is a narrative environment where perception is continuously reinforced, debated, and measured against data that is now showing movement in more than one direction.
There appears to have been a decline in her US popularity. at broadly the same time as a significant drop in US visitors to her website. Correlation does not imply causation, and the overlap may be coincidental. And I understand why he's put that in, but let's be honest, it's not.
Across polling data, digital traffic, and media coverage patterns, 3 separate streams of information are now being discussed in parallel. On one side, YouGov sentiment tracking shows a noticeable decline in Meghan Markle's US approval rating between late 2025 and early 2026, narrowing the gap between favorable and unfavorable opinion. On another, as ever, web traffic data shows a clear reduction in US-based engagement over the same general time frame, with a peak in December, followed by a steady downward shift into the spring months. And on a third layer, media coverage continues to maintain high visibility around Meghan Markle's lifestyle and brand identity, with consistent framing across major entertainment and lifestyle publications. Individually, each dataset can be interpreted in different ways. Together, they form a timeline of shifting attention, changing sentiment, and evolving engagement. What remains uncertain is not what the numbers show, but what they will show next. Whether this is a temporary fluctuation in public interest or the beginning of a longer-term structural change in audience behavior will only become clear with time and further data. For now, all 3 indicators are moving in the same general direction, and that alignment is what has brought renewed attention to the story. If you want daily breakdowns of stories like this, with the latest updates, numbers, and developments as they drop, make sure to subscribe to Crown Clash. New videos go up every day, covering the latest in real time. No filler, just the biggest updates and the details that matter.